Hi guys, on the pulse with Silky here, and I wouldn't be on the pulse if I didn't tell you about that incident that happened. So check out this short video clip here.
One of the guys that was there, his shirt was sucked out and his phone was sucked out.
I heard like a big bang and I didn't know exactly what was going on, but I look up and the oxygen masks were hanging from the ceiling. And then I look to my left and there's this huge chunk, part of the airplane just like missing.
I heard a pop noise. I felt the wind come forward and then it came back. It hit me in the face. I was trying to make sense of what's going on.
It was a trip from hell.
So what happened? There's certain Boeing MAX jets that are grounded after Alaska Airlines had to conduct an emergency landing. And we know, like, in the last few years, Boeing wasn't really, at least in my opinion, my company of choice, my company of trust when it comes to testing out their new airplanes or flying with them. I haven't flown since then, so I didn't face the problem, but I don't have a very good feeling about them recently. And so what happened, guys? One passenger of Alaska Airlines, they were on their way from Portland to California, and she says she started drafting her final texts to loved ones after a section of the plane blew out, guys. It literally blew out. You see a picture of the Stephanie King here. She wears her oxygen mask while she was recording a video aboard of Alaska Airlines flight this Friday, saying goodbye to her loved ones, telling them something's very, very wrong. So she was returning to her home in California after a visit to Portland when she heard a loud roar of wind on her Alaska Airlines flight. And she said she was seated in an aisle seat in row 12, several rows back. A section of the Boeing 737 MAX 9 aircraft had blown out shortly after takeoff. So she said, I just knew that something bad had happened. I wasn't sure what was going on and felt pretty scared. And she said flight attendants made announcements, but because the plane was literally open, it was too loud for her to hear much of what was being said. So imagine, guys, you're losing pressure. Something blows out. You don't know what is happening. Is that an explosion underneath? I would think, oh my God, we're going to crash. Your oxygen mask, you're falling down. So that's a very scary situation. So she says several passengers closer to the hole in the plane were frantic and they moved to empty seats away from the incident, which is also quite scary because if you open your seatbelt in order to get to another seat, you might be sucked out. So this sounds really scary what she's saying. And she says one of the ladies was screaming and crying and she was inconsolable and she kept saying, my son, he got his shirt ripped off. So she said it was absolutely surreal and she was fearing for her safety. And that's why she took out her phone and started recording. And she says, I was flying alone. I drafted some text messages to my boyfriend and my mom to say something was going on, that I was scared and that I love them. And she said, it felt like forever until the plane safely landed less than 10 minutes after the incident. And thankfully, guys, nobody was killed. Nobody was severely injured. And she said, 10 minutes, that was more than enough time to freak out though. She said, I heard that people's cell phones and shoes and shirts got thrown out of the window. So people were sitting and I don't know, that one woman described that her son's shirt got like taken off by the suction. So that's really, really scary. So she said, and I agree with her, anything could have happened. And shortly after the emergency landing, firefighters boarded the plane to see if there were injuries. And once the area was cleared, the deboarding process started. And the passenger says it was then really calm. Everyone was just in shock. We were all still so confused. Everybody was super quiet. It was eerie, actually, how quiet and calm everybody was just because it was so unreal. And she says she is still processing the event, but she has received communication and an amount of money that she doesn't want to say how high, so compensation from Alaska Airlines. And she says, and I agree with her, it is unsettling that there have been so many issues with this specific type of plane. And she says, I hope something is done so that this doesn't happen again, because it went okay this time, but it might not go like that next time. We know that engineering and quality problems have plagued Boeing in recent years. So Boeing has seen a string of incidents that have resulted in tragedies, groundings, and ongoing worries about safety. And in 2019, all 737 MAX planes were grounded, like all of them, across dozens of countries following the crashes of two of those planes. One crashed in Ethiopia and one near Indonesia, and it killed all 346 people on board these two airplanes. And it was determined a design flaw in the plane as a major cause of the crashes. And the US grounding lasted 20 months. So with planes starting to return to service in December 2020. But, do I have trust in that kind of airplane? No, I don't. And I always keep checking the kind of plane when, I see the list, what am I flying with, what am I actually boarding. I mean, do you then have much of a choice? I guess not. You can refuse to board, but I guess then it's too late to change your ticket. You probably lose a lot of money, but, better money than your life. I don't want to fly with that plane, that's for sure. But maybe I'm just crazy. Maybe people want to take that risk. We just talked about the Blue Lagoon in Iceland that just opened, although there's a volcanic activity going on underneath and they could be cooked like tourists in a hot pot. So yeah, I think everyone has a different willingness to take risks. But this was really sounding like a mini explosion. But now let's talk about what actually happened. What has blown out of the plane? So what was the reason for this? So one passenger reports there were a few moments when we weren't sure what was going to happen. So he says after the plane was gaining altitude shortly after taking off from Portland, he said he heard a loud boom. And he said it was like a mini explosion followed by a rapid depressurization. So he says a mist or cloud whooshed past me that kind of hit me in the face. I mean, you're sitting in the airplane, right? And it feels like you're on a mountaintop with an ice storm. That is scary. And he said people's hair was flying all over the place. Like, you know what I mean? So photos from passengers appear to show a section of the Boeing, like a fuselage plug, which appears to passengers like the typical interior of a commercial jet. It has a side and a window, blew off in flight, causing that decompression. And so the passenger says after the mini boom, it felt like the plane kind of jolted. We had our oxygen masks fall from the top and we put those on immediately, but it was a disorienting experience. It was pretty startled and frightened. I was pretty startled and frightened, and I think other folks were pretty distraught as well. So he said he was sitting on the left side of the plane, a few rows in front of where the panel blew off. And he says there were people much closer who I spoke with who lost AirPods out of their ears from the suction. And soon after the portion of the plane blew off, he says people were remarkably calm as they sat quietly listening to the flight crew. He said the flight crew and the pilot did a great job calming and reassuring passengers. And he says there were a few frantic passengers, but mostly everybody was calm. So Alaska Airlines then said 18 Boeing 737 MAX aircraft have been inspected in the meantime and have returned to service. Alaska Airlines says about a quarter of its Boeing 737 MAX aircraft have been returned to service after a thorough inspection, and that the remaining inspections will be completed in the next few days. And they started the inspections after Alaska Airlines announced it would temporarily ground its fleet of the aircraft model following that emergency landing. And then, after an order from the Federal Aviation Administration, the FAA, that ordered them to ground and inspect these planes nationwide. So the planes were returned to service following an in-depth and thorough plug door inspections. That's what Alaska said in a statement. And the plug door refers to a portion of the plane's fuselage that the manufacturer can put in place instead of an emergency exit door, depending on the configuration requested by an airline. So this is the portion of the plane that blew off Friday night, according to witnesses. And it was leaving a refrigerator-sized hole, so a massive hole, right? Not just like a window or something, it's a huge hole. So without a seatbelt, if you're standing there, you could be sucked. That's, you know what I mean? That sounds scary. So that's nothing minor, and you see the pictures here. Alaska Airlines says, once they're completing all the inspections, they will provide additional updates. It is unclear as of today what or who was to blame for that incident, but we know the engineering and quality problems have plagued Boeing in recent years. When they had to be grounded for 20 months because of like 2 crashes, deadly crashes, the grounding of all these aircraft was one of the most expensive corporate tragedies in history, costing the company more than $20 billion. And the costs are ongoing because Boeing has faced massive operating losses in recent quarters as it tries to deliver the huge backlog of 737 MAX planes to customers and racks up cost overruns on other planes, including the aircraft that will replace the current Air Force One jets. I don't know if I would use Boeing for that. Boeing has encountered a slew of other problems in recent years, and as recently as December, when the FAA urged airlines to inspect all 737 MAX planes in their fleets after the discovery of missing bolts in 2 planes' rudder control systems. So what is going on? I have a feeling just recently that every video that I make, I want to give them the title, "What the F is going on?" I don't know. Boeing says they support the FAA's temporary grounding decision and an NTSB investigation. This is their statement. They're saying, "Safety is our top priority, and we deeply regret the impact this event has had on our customers and their passengers. We agree with and fully support the FAA's decision to require immediate inspections of 737-9 airplanes with the same configuration as the affected airplane." That's what a spokesperson said in a statement. And the company also indicated that its technical team is supporting the National Transportation Safety Board's investigation. Does that calm me down? I don't know. Guys, let me know in the comments. What do you think? One thing I found out about this is that specific plane of Alaska Airlines where the incident happened, where that piece fell out, has been in service for about 3 months. That's what records show. And it has flown about 150 times since October 2023. So I guess that's after it was in service. And that's according to the flight tracking site that you can look up on FlightAware. and the Federal Aviation Administration records. The aircraft is listed in an FAA database as having been manufactured in 2023. So new. That is scary. So you might think that after 2 deadly crashes, they would do better. Much better. So the plane is registered as N704AL, and it flew its first tracked flight on October 15th, and it was certified as airworthy by the FAA 10 days later. Its FAA certificate was issued on November 2nd, according to administration records. Flight testing is a standard part of the process to certify aircraft. The plane's first tracked flight with Alaska Airlines flight number was on October 31st, according to the Flight Aware records. And since then, the aircraft has made several transcontinental flights to Boston, Fort Lauderdale, and New York City, and has repeatedly flown in and out of Alaska's Seattle headquarters. So the question is, with all the inspections that they have done now, will they, if they don't know why it has blown out, do these inspections really help? If you don't know what is all of a sudden causing the blowout, you might look at the plane. I mean, the plane that had the incident has passed the inspections, and it still happened. So now they have been inspected again. Yes, now they know what part to look at, but I would like to know first, why has this blown out before I would let these planes fly again, especially because of Boeing's recent track record. That's just my opinion. And it seems I'm not the only one who has that opinion. So there's a Republican senator, his name is J.D. Vance, and he's from Ohio, and he says, last night's near catastrophe involving an Alaska Airlines Boeing 737 MAX 9 calls the Federal Aviation Administration's November 2020 ungrounding of the MAX fleet into question. And so he sits on the Senate Committee on Commerce, Science, and Transportation, which oversees the FAA. And he was among the first on Capitol Hill to lob criticism since Friday night's emergency landing of Alaska Airlines Flight 1282 in Portland, Oregon. There were 171 passengers and 6 crew members on board, and they just avoided a severe catastrophe. And then the FAA grounded the 737 MAX for 20 months after 2 crashes that did kill 346 people. And he also said pilots have filed safety complaints on these aircrafts, many of which had just rolled off the production line at a rate which is unbecoming of American aviation. So this is really, wow, right? He says, my own family has flown on 737 MAX aircraft multiple times in the past year. Every American deserves a full explanation from Boeing and the FAA on what's gone wrong and on the steps that are being taken to ensure another accident does not occur in the near future. And shortly after he made those comments, the FAA did announce it was temporarily grounding about 171 Boeing MAX jets of this specific type that was involved in the Alaska Airlines incident. I have to give a shout out to the crew and the flight attendants who stay so calm and take care of the passengers. One passenger said the flight attendant came over and told me it was going to be okay, and the fact that everyone was kind of freaking out and that this flight attendant took that time to kind of make me feel like I was the only passenger. Honestly, that was really sweet. And the passengers have applauded as the plane landed. And, some passengers stood up, but flight attendants then reminded them to remain seated. And one man could be heard saying, there's a effing hole in the plane. What the F is that? So yeah, we can imagine, right? I think that would have been my words as well. Thankfully, everything has gone well. The transportation officials have sent a GO team to investigate that jet. They sent them to Portland, Oregon to investigate that incident. So yeah, guys, that was my report on that. If I find out more, specifically why that hole was created, why it has blown off, I will let you know. Until then, check out one of my other videos if you like. There's lots about the Titan submersible, the volcanic activity in Iceland. We have an eruption imminent. So check this out. And to you guys that have seen my videos before, thank you so much for watching. Thank you so much for your supers that you keep buying me, and the coffees on buymeacoffee.com. And if you're here the first time, thanks for being here. If you could subscribe, that would be wonderful. I would love to see you all again in one of my next videos. Thank you so much, guys. Stay safe. Bye-bye.